So Build 42 has landed with a whole bunch of new and exciting areas to explore within Nox country, but with the map being so large and so many of these areas being tucked away in the corners of the playable area, overloaded with zombies or just straight up being hidden underground, it could take you weeks to check them all out naturally, and you're probably not even aware that some exist. So with all that in mind, this video will showcase all of the new towns, secret underground bunkers, towering skyscrapers, and even a stroll through the Wild West. There's a whole lot more than that though, so strap in, like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. This is a grand tour of all of the new areas in Build 42. So first off, in today's video, I wanted to check out one of the brand new underground areas that have been added in the new update. Basements are one thing. You can find these attached to all sorts of buildings now, some static and some random, but the devs haven't stopped there. They've taken it one step further and have created some much larger underground zones that are hidden away in unsuspecting locations. For example, there's what appears to be some sort of underground bomb shelter in March Ridge, just to the west of both the school and the military apartment block. You have to descend a few floors to get there, and once you reach the bottom of that stairwell, you'll need to break through a few metal garage doors before gaining entrance. There's 2 bunk rooms and 2 bathrooms separated by gender, which I imagine is on account of it being linked to the nearby school building. There's a small armory, which was unfortunately empty when I came across it, as was most of the other storage here, so while I can't recommend it as a goal for a loot run, I will say that there was a surprisingly small amount of zombies here, so it could make for a very good safe house location, considering it already has a whole range of storage options and plenty of appliances to make sure you can actually live there effectively. My only concern with this location as a safe house choice would be power. I'm not really sure how generators work for these locations that are buried deep underground, so if anyone has tried that, do feel free to leave a comment and let me know how you got around the power problem in a place like this. Anyway, let's get back above ground and take you to the next location in today's video. So next on our tour is Echo Creek, a location that you are likely already familiar with thanks to the option to start your journey there in Build 42 with a brand new spawn point, but I'd be willing to bet that there's a location nearby that you're not even aware of. This area of the map can be found in the central western reaches between Brandenburg and Irvington. Now I think Echo Creek is in contention to become the most beginner-friendly start point in this update, and that's down to the fact it's incredibly rural, it's a backwater farming town with a small population. That fact is shown by the relatively minimal presence of undead in the area and the abundance of peaceful farm properties that can make for fantastic safe houses, many even coming with their own livestock. As an alternative safe house suggestion, you could check out the local gas station, which comes with its own basement, upper floor, and of course the connected gas pumps. The animals you'll find scattered throughout Echo Creek definitely seem to have been a focus for the town during the design phase, and as such, if you're looking to try out the animal husbandry features of Build 42, this is the place to do it. There's even a wildlife rescue center to the southwest of the town that would give you all the animals you could ever want and more, assuming of course you're willing to work your way through these zombies wandering the premises. The wildlife center isn't the busiest location in Echo Creek, however. That title would no doubt go to the local gun show. Fitted with its own assault course and positively swarming with Zeds, this is not only the best spot to find guns and ammo, it's also hands down the place you're most likely to use them. Now, I mentioned that there's probably a location here that you're not even aware of, and that place is just to the northwest of Echo Creek, hidden away in the woods along a winding trail. Surrounded by a metal fence with a sign marking the area as restricted, this abandoned, broken down husk of a building seems to be some kind of old school, possibly a boarding school, on account of not only the classrooms downstairs, but also the bedrooms on the upper floors. The buildings are covered in graffiti, many of the rooms are trashed and empty, and nature has certainly reclaimed most of the grounds behind the main building. Still, if you were looking for a larger building to refurbish and turn into a safe house when multiplayer comes out, this could be a location big enough to support an entire group, and to be honest, it's just a really eerie place to walk through. Just a quick side note here, while I do generally really like the changes made to zombie distribution, this is an example of where it could use some improvements, because despite the fact that this this building is clearly set up to be abandoned, there are hordes of zombies at this location. Alright, so moving away from Echo Creek, we're going back underground in this next one, and it may not be something you're expecting because it's right underneath a location you probably already know. Ever been to this place before? This is the secret research facility in the forest to the west of Rosewood. If you're new to Project Zomboid in Build 42, you may not recall seeing it on the map. That's because it's not on the map you'll see on the spawn menu on account of it being top secret. In Build 42, this high-tech facility now has a sprawling underground network that is chock full of supplies and interesting things to see. It goes down 12 floors before it even gets to the underground part of the facility, and once you reach it, there's 5 more levels you can explore. I was frankly absolutely blown away by this place when I was recording this video. It took me almost a full hour to get through the whole place, and that was without having to fight all the hordes of zombies that were gathering down here. Now, I do think that there's something to be said about the zombie numbers. I mean, they were absolutely swarming this place, and if you actually wanted to go and explore this area naturally, I think you'd spend weeks, maybe months of in-game time trying to clear the place out, and that's assuming you were able to gather enough weapons and ammo to do so, which I don't think would even be possible unless you jack up the loot settings. Still, it is a spooky and well-designed labyrinth that I think everyone needs to see at least once. You can find huge supplies of weapons, ammunition, food stores, medical supplies, and just about anything else you could think of that you might need to survive. I found a boxing ring in the corner of one of the subterranean levels, a laboratory with high-tech equipment that strangely seemed to be linked directly to a morgue, suggesting that they might have been doing research or experiments on the deceased, and even what looked to be a dugout tunnel area with the remnants of a survivor camp, maybe from employees at the facility that found their way down here after the outbreak. This place is a huge network of underground tunnels that is just begging to be explored and to be featured in challenge runs from all your favorite creators, but I do think for the average player this would be an insurmountable challenge. Also, you know how the devs like to put a row of cones to mark the edge of a map boundary? Well, on the lowest floor in these tunnels there's a few cones set up by this wall, and I'm wondering if this signifies that they're looking to expand on this even more to make maybe an underground entrance to this facility. Now that's pure speculation on my part, of course, but I think that would make an awesome alternative entry for this location. Okay, so I know we're not really focusing on potential safe houses in this video, but this next one is definitely one that I can see being incredibly popular when multiplayer comes around in the future. This is the McCoy Estate, located northwest of Muldraw, directly north of the McCoy logging camp. The reason I wanted to find a space for this location in this video is because, yes, it's brand new, but also it offers a way for players to get to grips with the new crafting system, even in its unfinished state, because right beside the main building, there's a workshop with a bunch of the new workbenches. Aside from that, there are already planted gardens that you can harvest, a large pen to keep animals, and the main building even has a built-in butchering room. There's also a fishing dock with plenty of additional freezer space and a small camp across the lake. This estate looks as though it was designed by the developers to allow players to try and live outside the towns and cities of Kentucky, surviving on whatever they could farm, hunt, or catch for themselves. The interior of the building is a really good showing of how map design has really stepped up in Build 42 as well, with plenty of new tiles and stellar decorative work. If you decide to venture out to this location on your own in a regular playthrough, just keep in mind that there will be a good bunch of zombies waiting for you when you arrive, so come prepared to deal with all eventualities. But if you can clear the area, this could be the ideal safe house. If you'd rather not deal with all those zombies, however, and want to make your start here, there is already a mod out there called McCoy Estate KY, which will add this location to the spawn menu. It's awesome that we're already seeing mods like this for Build 42. Okay, back to the western reaches of the map with this next one, specifically to Irvington, a town just a short drive to the southwest of the earlier mentioned Echo Creek. Irvington is a rural country town with some great looting options for those that are based up on the outskirts, the largest of which being Irvington Elementary, which comes with its own library, making it a valuable looting hotspot. Irvington is a relatively busy location, but that's not to say that it's impossible to get around. There are hardware stores, fire stations, gigamarts, and my personal favorite, the Wizard's Keep, which offers a chance at acquiring a stunning and rare wizard hat only the most accomplished of mages may wear. And right beside that is the gun store, which is probably more useful to you. My highlight from Irvington, however, was just to the north of these storefronts, where you'll find a few multi-story townhouses with built-in garages and balconies, making a great safe house location on the outskirts of town. Irvington also has a local gun range, which is much less populated than the one in Echo Creek, but of course with less loot spawns as a trade-off. If all that didn't do it for you though, perhaps you could take your post-apocalyptic steed for a spin around the Irvington Speedway to the northwest, complete with storefronts, buildings for the race staff, and lots of seating for all of the very confused undead spectators that seem to have wandered out onto the tracks. So this next one is a personal favorite of mine that I think many players are unlikely to actually go and see, because realistically it doesn't have too much in the way of unique or desirable loot locations. This is Dark Wallow Lake, located directly south of Rosewood and southwest of March Ridge. If you were to head here from the direction of March Ridge, you're likely to come across the local gas station, and just to the south of that a fishing tackle store that I can see being a quintessential part of making your home here if that's what you choose to do. Now, if its name didn't give it away, Dark Wallow Lake features a range of lakeside properties from small cabins to larger, more lavish residencies on the south side of the lake. While a lot of these buildings would make for ideal safe houses, I don't necessarily see this area getting a bunch of attention until maybe some modded maps come along and connect to the nearby area. Still, if you do choose to visit, there's a couple of larger points of interest like the wastewater treatment plant, the local campgrounds, and the multi-story lakeside resort. These locations are fairly crowded, so I'd recommend coming with a plan of action if you decide to explore these areas, but in my opinion there's far more interesting things to discover hidden away in the local woods. I was able to find this run-down, dilapidated old chapel while I was exploring the area, and the environmental storytelling here is just top-notch. There's clear signs that folk may have been living here after the outbreak, and just a few steps away were two makeshift graves, one filled and the other empty. It's almost a shame, to be honest, that this location is so far from everything else. Survival here would be a real challenge, but it is definitely worth the effort if you're looking for some cool things to see. Now we're moving away from Dark Wallow Lake and over to the Ohio River with the next spot in today's video, all the way to the very northwest corner of the map. This is Brandenburg, a brand new town that has been added in this update that appears to have been ravaged by a tornado prior to the zombie outbreak. Not only is this visible from a bird's eye view if you were to look at the area using an online map thanks to the clear trail the tornado has followed marked in the earth, but also by the damage it has done to the town itself. You'll find entire areas where buildings have been ripped apart, others with minor damages or weathering that's even reflected in the way some of the previous residents would have lived. For example, at the large community center there seems to be rooms that have been fitted with emergency accommodation and beds. There's even a tornado shelter in the town, which you can actually find a leaflet for as well if you're lucky, so you can reveal the location in advance on your in-game map and start to plot a course there. Now, Brandenburg is a busy place, which is as populated by zombies as it is large. I think it would be fair to say that you could find just about everything you'd want in this town, however, whether it's stocked loot locations for your shopping spree or an interesting place to call home like the PS Delilah that's docked on the northern edge of town. Other notable locations in Brandenburg include the detention center, the incredibly lavish mansion out to the southwest on the outskirts of the area, which comes with its own tennis court and library, and lastly the military checkpoint on the northwest corner of town that guards the bridge over the river. Also, just a very quick tip here, this container at the military checkpoint is worth breaking into if you decide to hit this up because it's simply full of loot crates. Overall, Brandenburg has a whole lot of character and could offer you a new area to spend at least a few of your playthroughs due to its size, safe house opportunities, and great looting options. Now we're checking out Ekron next, which is a brand new addition to the map found to the northwest of Echo Creek and southwest of Brandenburg. Ekron has always been confused with the previously available area known as Phallus Lake. Yes, that is actually called that. I can't possibly see why, but now we've got an end to that argument because Ekron has officially been added as its own new town. Now, I will say that Ekron didn't exactly stand out to me with anything that blew me away compared to some of the other areas added to Nox Country. It's mostly just another small farming town with some half-decent safe houses, thanks to some already built fencing and some well-placed farming zones. Still, there are a couple of highlights, such as the broken train that cuts right across the main road leading into town from east to west. I actually really like this because it's an interesting little obstacle that actually challenges you to find an alternate path or create a route through the train, which is something we don't see too often in Project Zomboid. There's a couple of local restaurants, some storefronts, a community center, a fire department, and a sizable church that comes with an underground crypt as well, which I thought was kind of spooky. Really though, where Ekron shines is the ability to offer a few larger structures on the outskirts of town that come with a lot of the stuff you'd be looking for in a potential safe house. Easy to defend locations with running water, electricity, ready installed food sources, and fences to keep the undead at bay. Now, I was about to go away from Ekron mostly disappointed by it after seeing some of the other areas of the map. That was until I found this at an unsuspecting workshop just to the east of the broken train. This turned out to be an entire workshop dedicated to the creation of David the Gnome, and for that reason alone, this place has redeemed itself in my eyes. Special shout out to David, by the way. Okay, so we're back to the frontier in this next area, going back in time to a Wild West themed tourist town. This is shown on the map as the historic coalfield, located directly north of Echo Creek and is kind of hidden away on the map shown on the spawn menu by a bit of a scuff on the paper. Now, while this area is just a single street, it is filled with character. The central building is the Coalfield Inn, which I assume was used by visitors to spend the night, since it's mostly just bedrooms. But there's also the El Grande Saloon right beside the hardware store, and further down on the west side there's also a hangman's noose beside the church. On the other side of the area to the east, there's a really nifty sheriff's department with only 2 cells for nefarious bandits, and a nice little wooden cabin at the end of the strip. I can see this place being used a bit more when multiplayer rolls around for Build 42, but until then it's still a really cool place to mark on your map for a road trip. As with many of the locations in this video, just keep in mind that there will be a lot of zombies in this area, so you will need to come prepared. While Build 42 has added a ton of new places to check out for the first time, I'm sure many of you have noticed that the rest of the existing map has seen a bit of a makeover too. While I couldn't hope to cover them all in this video, I'll try to include as much as I can in the background footage during this section, complete with the name of each one shown on screen and a comparison to their old versions using the online Build 41 map project. Muldraugh in particular has seen a big facelift, with iconic buildings like Courtman Medical, the Rusty Rifle, the Sunstar Motel, and Muldraugh Police Department, all seeing big reworks to name just a few of them. Muldraugh isn't alone in this though. If you were to visit Twiggy's Bar in West Point, for example, you'd notice some big changes to both the interior and exterior of the building. The Rosewood Police Department has clearly received new funding, and the main street clearly looks better than its Build 41 counterparts. Even Phallus Lake has received some tender love and care. And yes, that's the wording I chose when writing this, and I'm standing by it, with buildings like these ones getting the new and improved look about them. So as you guys can see, many existing map areas will look entirely different to what you once knew, with Muldraugh being the focal point of those changes. But there's one place I haven't mentioned yet, and that's LouEEville. Yes, I pronounce it LouEEville. I always always get at least one comment telling me I'm uncultured swine when I pronounce it like this, and my answer to that is yes, I'm British. Being uncultured is positively part of our culture, right next to stealing everyone else's and putting it in a museum. Anyway, back to LouEEville. Those of you that followed the Thursdoids or my videos on them will know that the skybox has now been vastly expanded in Project Zomboid, which means that we can have skyscrapers. If you head to the center of LouEEville now, you'll find a cluster of them reaching far to the sky and posing a daunting task to anyone wishing to explore them. Now, with so many levels to flesh out in each of these buildings, I wasn't expecting them to be incredibly detailed or different, but I was pleasantly surprised when I took a wander through Spiffo headquarters, which is now several stories higher than it used to be. There were some genuinely interesting things to find on each floor, and each floor was different in both functionality and appearance. For example, the ground floor was a restaurant area, and as I ascended through the levels, I found offices, a Spiffo-themed recording studio that I imagine the marketing department uses, some lavish executive offices on the higher floors, and even a helipad on the roof. I guess what I'm saying is that it would have been very easy for the devs to stick to a common template for these buildings, but having walked around each one, that doesn't seem to be the case, and they've put some genuine effort into every single one of these buildings, which is really nice to see. The skyscrapers of LouEEville aren't the only new feature that has been brought to the city, however. Some of you may remember from Build 41 that there was a relatively popular modded map created by Simon MD that gave LouEEville its very own airport. Well, you might not be needing that mod in Build 42 because the devs have created their own version from scratch. Check in your luggage, maybe do some shopping at the duty free, stop for a bite to eat, and then head to your gate to wait for your flight. While there aren't actually any planes in the game yet, static or otherwise, and the runway can feel a bit bare bones as a result of that, there are still some unique locations to check out in the area, like restaurants, hotels, and one that stuck out to me in particular, the Mannequin and Doll Factory. I have to say, the ambient sounds that have been brought in with this update, plus the lack of lighting, really made exploring this building a creepy experience. I was half expecting one of them to move and I'd end up having a reaction similar to Will Smith in I Am Legend when he comes across his friend Fred.
What the hell are you? No! No!
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that I actually think I preferred the modded version of this area before Build 42, but I mostly put that down to the fact that there's no planes for us to explore yet, and I hope the devs are able to add them in the future to really make this a special location to go and see. Now, before we wrap up this video today, I wanted to end with somewhere really special that I think you need to go and see in your own playthroughs at some stage. This humongous structure is the Sanatorium, which is actually loosely based on a real-life location in Kentucky known as the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. In the early 1900s, this isolated hospital was opened to cope with a rising outbreak of tuberculosis, eventually closing down in 1961. As such, the counterpart location in Project Zomboid is abandoned, dilapidated, and absolutely gave me the creeps while I was walking through the barren hallways of the old hospital. Most of the rooms within are clearly meant to be dorms of some sort, with a medical wing on the eastern side of the building, and even a small library, which unfortunately doesn't hold books anymore, just assorted junk items. Now, if you ascend to the 4th floor, however, this is when things get really spooky. You'll find a secure unit containing metal doors with windows and very simple cells with bland white wallpaper, very clearly demonstrating that this was supposed to be the psychiatric wing of the facility. What I found particularly haunting was that one of these rooms came adorned with the scribbled drawings of a child. As if that wasn't enough to send a shiver down your spine, the ground floor actually has a small morgue that descends to a sub-level access tunnel. This tunnel leads outside the facility to an inconspicuous building only marked with a sign reading restricted area. This building isn't even shown on the in-game map, suggesting that it's not exactly kosher. The way this place has been designed is to leave you constantly asking more questions and then and finding the horrifying answer to them not long after. This is somewhere you have to see for yourself to really get the full experience. So that's it from me in this video, and that's all of the new areas that I'd recommend you go and see in Build 42, but I'm sure I'll do some more videos in the very near future on things like safe houses or loot locations too. With that in mind, if there's any videos that you'd really like to see from me in the coming weeks, just let me know down in the comments, because I've definitely got a lot of ideas right now. It's just narrowing down what it is that you folks at home want from the channel. I'd like to say a very special thank you to all of my Patreon subscribers for their support. It means the absolute world to me, and if you'd like to join them in backing the channel, you can find a link down in the description for that. Thanks everyone, and I will see you all in the next one.